You're listening to the Baumbastic Podcast with Andrew Ellis on Inside Arkansas.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Baumbastic Podcast, presented by Inside Arkansas and hosted by Andrew Ellis. I think we all agree, the best baseball show on the planet. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you for everyone who has tapped in on the Baumbastic Podcast and has been watching as we continue along our journey with this 2025 Arkansas baseball season. The Hogs are coming off of what I would describe as a pretty good weekend. So the vibes are good. Arkansas's 15-1. We got SEC play coming up this weekend against Ole Miss. So we'll get to see a real test for this Razorback team. Of course, their first true road series. And in SEC play, that's where you really separate the boys from the men. That's where you really find out how good you are. I feel like this Arkansas team is going to get a very good barometer in Ole Miss, who preseason was not a team anyone was really talking about. They were picked, I think, 14th or 15th in the SEC, above Missouri and maybe one other team. But they were viewed as kind of an afterthought coming into this season. They've worked their way into the top 25. They've been playing some pretty good baseball. Just came off of a pretty impressive sweep over Jacksonville State. They whipped up on them pretty good. And so I think going to Oxford and playing that team will show us a little bit about where this Arkansas team really is at. I feel pretty good about where the Diamond Hogs are at as it stands today, March 10th. Of course, they have not been tested they haven't been facing the stiffest competition necessarily. You were supposed to sweep Charlotte. You were supposed to sweep Portland. You were supposed to do pretty well in Arlington, even though Arkansas, dropped a game there to Kansas State. You go 2-1. I think that's about kind of what we expected. So nothing's really gone out of the ordinary for Arkansas, and it's easy to look good in a homestand when you're playing non-Power 5 teams. And so I'm appreciative that Arkansas did it the way they did, and that they really came out and whipped Portland up in those first two games, especially. And I think especially coming off that Charlotte series, I think there were some people who were not thrilled with the margin of victory, would like to see Arkansas really flex their muscle against some weaker competition, and they did that. And so kudos to them. I just feel like I really like where this team's at all around. Certainly some guys that, you'd like to play a little bit better, could clean some things up. Still kind of trying to figure out exactly what their formula will be on the mound in the back end of ball games. We'll talk about that here in a second with one of our winners of the weekend. But overall, just top to bottom, is there anything that really is like concerning to you about this Arkansas baseball team? Because for me, not really. And if I did have concerns, and we spoke about this a little bit last week, like Gabe Gackle was pretty good on Friday, came off a really rough start against Charlotte. So maybe preseason, I'm sure we all felt better about him than we do now. But are we really like that concerned big picture with Gabe Gackle moving forward? Christian Fouch, I know some people have really, really soured on Christian Fouch, especially after his outing last Sunday against Charlotte. I thought he looked much better the other day coming in the eighth inning. Are we really like that concerned about whether or not Arkansas is going to be able to get some key innings out of the guy that throws 100? I'm not particularly concerned about stuff like that. And even in this lineup, you just kind of look at it 1 through 9. Kendall Diggs at this point is one of your worst hitters, and that's a guy we know what he's capable of, and I think he's swinging the bat pretty well right now. Nolan Souza, of course, you could throw in that same mix of a guy that is underperforming so far, but he's starting to get it going a little bit. Had his 5-game hit streak snapped on a Sunday, but I think we all agree he's swinging the bat a little bit better. If those are your worst players, if your worst pitcher is Gabe Gackle and Christian Fouch, you're in a good spot. If your worst hitter is Nolan Souza and Kendall Diggs and even Rocco Pepe, you're in a good spot. I think we should all be able to agree on that. And so really excited to continue to watch this team round into shape, continue to see this team face better competition, and we'll get a much better feel for who Arkansas can count on and what we do with the lineup, what we do with the pitching staff and all that. So I'm not naive to think that Arkansas is just going to cruise their way through the season. They're about to just blow everyone out every weekend, but I'm really glad they did it. Because if I was being honest with you, this time last year, I don't know if I necessarily had as positive of vibes. I thought last year's team was going to make a run to Omaha. I thought they were going to be a lot better. But a lot of times, if you go back and listen to the Baumbastic Podcast in our inaugural season, a lot of what I was saying was, Arkansas's not playing well right now, but they'll be better. And, they're still winning. They're winning series and, good 5-4 win on Sunday. I was always kind of not critical of them. I just kind of assumed they would figure it out down the stretch, especially offensively. And they never really did. It's like we were constantly waiting on them to kick it into gear. And of course, when you're winning games, which is what last year's team did consistently, it's a little bit easier to overlook some stuff. So I really appreciate this team so far through 16 games against mostly poor competition for just kind of showing us the ceiling of what they can be. And it was really good to see the lineup, what they combined for. 35 runs in 3 games this weekend, and that doesn't include the 2 midweek run rules that you had. And so basically, Arkansas, like I said coming into this, they're in stat padding season, and that's what Arkansas has been doing here lately. And so I feel really good. I just wanted to offer that little recap of the weekend and sort of my official thoughts on how I feel about it. It's very good. So you know who won the weekend? The Arkansas Razorbacks won the weekend. And, of course, in the polls, it's reflected, as you would imagine. Arkansas still holding strong at number 3 in the D1 baseball poll. I saw even Perfect Game, who's been very sour on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Even they are starting to come around. Has Arkansas, I think, either 7 or 8. They're starting to move their way on up. And so we'll see if they eventually get Arkansas in that top 5. But Arkansas is unanimously viewed as one of the better teams in the country. And to this point, like, I think they are. I don't really think there's much debate about that. And so we're going to dive into it a little bit more and talk about who we think won the weekend, the 5 individual performances that I felt like really stuck out. And again, it's not always about just what the individual does. It's more so about what their performance means for the Razorbacks moving forward and sort of what their individual performance has earned them in the process. This week's a little bit easier because we had a lot of hitters that really came to the plate and showed up and showed out, made it a pretty easy decision for a lot of these guys. But before we get into that, of course, I want to remind you guys that this show is brought to you by Alumni Hall, the ultimate Razorback shopping experience. You've heard me say it 1,000 times now. Go check those guys out at 3417 North College Avenue in Fayetteville, or shop them online here at this website, insidearkansas.com/alumni hall. Whatever it is that you want, and you want there to be a Razorback logo on it, Alumni Hall has it. I promise you. If you don't believe me, go check out that online store and use the promo code HOGSBY20. HOGSBY20 will get you a 20% off deal for your first purchase. So rack up on all you need, whether that's clothes for the spring. Maybe you want to get Curtis and Michelle a baby gift. Shout out to Curtis Wilkerson and Michelle. Very excited. If you missed that announcement, they are expecting. We had a good fun time with that on Inside Arkansas Live. If you want to get something for the dog, something for the granny, something for your significant other, whatever it is, or you just want to get the latest merch, the latest, coolest stuff. They've got the Peter Millar. They've got the Columbia. They've got it all. They've got all the latest brands, too. They've got a really nice, diverse selection. So go check out Alumni Hall, like I said, over there at 3417 North College Avenue. But if you want to shop them online and see what their online store is all about, insidearkansas.com/alumni hall. That will take you right there. Use that promo code HOGSBY20 for 20% off your first purchase. Okay, so let's hop right into our winners of the weekend. The first one's pretty simple. This young man I think he's been a winner of the weekend at least twice now, maybe 3 times. He's a guy you all know and love very well. His name is Fayetteville Fly, the shortstop for the Arkansas Razorbacks, who, by the way, is for the second time this year the SEC Player of the Week. I believe he's sharing that honor this week. I didn't see who he was sharing it with, but good for Fayetteville Fly. Always nice to get that recognition from the conference. And he's one of the best shortstops in college baseball. He's a guy that has really helped his draft stock a good bit in this opening portion of the season. He's clearly a much better overall threat at the plate for the Arkansas Razorbacks. He goes 7 for 10 on the weekend, hits 3 home runs, 2 of which came in that Friday game, takes his total to 6 on the year, ties his brother and Brent Iredale for the team lead. Also threw in a 2-run double in the mix on Saturday, drove in 9 runs and scored 7 runs this weekend. That is a lot of big-time run-producing production from your shortstop, from your number 2 hitter, a guy that we feel like needs, we all coming into the year, we all felt like needed to take that step and be a better overall hitter to lead this Razorback team. And Arkansas has been kind of missing some of that star power. I think Fayetteville Fly at this point, it's confirmed, definitely has that star power. Hell, his brother, who's been on this list quite a bit so far this season, he has that star power as well. Ultimately, when you get into SEC play, now that Arkansas is about to start facing better and better pitching, having a threat like this at the plate really is just a game changer. Cannot say enough about how impressed I've been with Fayetteville Fly and just his overall approach at the plate. He's taking his walks. He's actually not striking out that much. I always make the joke with him and his brother where I'm like, hey, they really don't mind striking out, especially if it means their next at bat they're going to get a home run. But Fayetteville Fly's only struck out 7 times this year in 60 at bats, and that doesn't include the 13 plate appearances he has in free passes with walks and hit by pitches. Just really impressive to see his overall, his patience, his ability to go opposite field, his ability to shorten up with 2 strikes, all been really good so far this year. He's also been pretty damn good defensively. He made those 2 errors against Michigan a couple weeks ago, has not made an error since. So really good to see Fayetteville Fly continuing to kind of set the tone for this Razorback lineup. And speaking of setting the tone, the only guy above Fayetteville Fly in this Razorback lineup is a leadoff guy, Charles Davalon, who I also have as one of my winners of the week. Davalon is a guy that a week ago I would have told you he's hitting fine. I think someone even last week on Sunday's live stream was like, hey, what are your thoughts on Davalon so far? Has he been about what you expected? And I'd say, yeah, he's been fine. I think going into the week, he was hitting like 270, 275 or something like that. Was getting on base a decent amount, had 1 home run. I was like, yeah, he's been pretty good. But we felt like there was a little bit more in there. And boy, did it come out this week. So these are his numbers here for the weekend. You see 6 of 10 at the plate. That's 600. Hits his 3rd home run of the year. Drove in a run with that home run. Scored 7 runs in 3 games. That's big-time stuff. Also stole a base, something that we know he's capable of, something that we might see him dabble with a little bit more. I guess that's just his 2nd stolen base on the year. So we'll see if he can get up to that 13 total he had last year. But what's crazy about Davalon, if you take it a step further, again, these are his numbers from the weekend, but in the midweek, he also drove in 4 runs against ULM, scored 7 runs in that 2-game series. And so you go back to this week overall in 5 games, Charles Davalon at the leadoff spot scores 14 runs for Arkansas. Dude's just been living on base, racking up base hits, showing off some power too, which I think is really nice. Just a really good overall threat at the plate. He definitely looks a lot more comfortable. I just feel like there's a lot of positive signs with him. Of course, when you're getting base hits, it's easier to be comfortable. That's one thing DBH said about him is that it felt like it took him a while to really find his footing, but he's a much more dangerous player now than he maybe felt a couple weeks ago. Another sign, so Davalon's one of these guys, and by the way, Charles Davalon being the Florida Gulf Coast transfer, who's been starting in left field mostly for Arkansas, gets some starts in center field still to this day a little bit. He's a guy that has a lot of personality. I feel like he's a little bit of that spark plug, that dirtbag energy that this Razorback team needs. And you're starting to see a little bit more of that come out. He's been pretty quiet, pretty reserved. The other day, he has all these weird like mannerisms that he has a little bit that make him fun to watch. The other day, he took a pitch and sort of did like a Juan Soto-esque shuffle. I think he even like maybe jumped up and down. He's just one of those like kind of antsy, fidgety, always moving type of guys. But that's what kind of makes him fascinating to watch and makes him kind of a fun guy to set the tone at the top of the lineup. And that's stuff that we saw him do in offseason scrimmages in the fall, spring a little bit. We saw this kind of expressive personality. And the other day was like the first time I can really think, I'm like, oh, yeah, there's Charles Davalon. There's the guy that we like, that we know and love. And of course, certainly, like I said, helps when you're getting hits every time you get up to the plate or you're getting on base so many times. Definitely helps bring some of that out of him. But I think he's going to be a guy that as we continue this journey and you guys continue to fall in love with this team, Davalon's going to be one of those guys that you just come to love and just a grinder, just loves playing baseball. And that's what you really love to see. Another guy who loves playing baseball, another guy that you guys, I'm sure, have already fallen in love with. We got Brent Iredale. We got the Aussie. I don't even know if you could say quietly, but I mean, like, considering how many people swung it well for Arkansas this weekend, I felt like his performance kind of slipped under the radar a little bit, if that's possible. He has 3 home runs on the weekend, goes 5 for 10 at the plate. The 3 home runs brings his total as well to 6 on the year, tying Kahio Aloy for the team lead. Added in a couple doubles, 11 runs driven in. 8 of those 11 runs he drove in came on Friday's game where Arkansas wins 20-3. But I felt like the 3 he had, which all came in the first inning on a 3-run home run on Sunday, wound up being like the 3 biggest runs of the weekend because that ended up being all Arkansas needed to win their Sunday game. He also scores 6 runs, also steals a base. He's 2 for 2 on the year. He's a sneaky good athlete as well. he's another one that I feel like has just been really, really strong at third base. Knock on wood, has not committed an error this season and has just been really solid. I don't know if I've compared him to Caden Wallace a good bit. I still don't know if he's like a Caden Wallace level freak athletically in terms of lateral side to side movement. And I think Caden Wallace is a little bit stronger arm, but overall, I think those guys are pretty comparable in terms of the production they bring at the plate, the well-roundedness of their skill sets. Like Brent Iredale has been really fun to watch the plate because he just feels like a professional hitter. He feels like he has an idea of what he wants to do. And in the field, you never see him getting sped up too much. Just a really solid all-around skill set. One thing I really like about Brent Iredale, so he struck out 11 times this year, which is not a small total, not nothing to overlook. I think that is tied for the third most on the team with Justin Thomas. But he's also drawn a team high 15 walks, also been hit by 4 pitches as well. That ability to take those walks, I feel like takes his game to another level. And it's also going to be very important because when you get into SEC play, the scouting reports get a little bit more complex. Teams start really focusing in on who can hurt them, who they need to avoid. And so I feel like in SEC play, when, like, for instance, this weekend with Ole Miss, they're going to take a look at Arkansas's lineup. They're going to circle Vahiva Aloy. They're probably going to circle his brother Kahio Aloy. And they're going to be circling Brent Iredale too, because, I mean, he's a guy that looks the part. He's starting to gain some steam as a prospect. But with the numbers he's putting up, he's going to be a guy that teams will not mind pitching around. So I think you might see Brent Iredale's batting average dip off just a little bit in SEC play. I mean, the dude's hitting over 400 anyway, so it's probably just some regression to the mean. But again, I think SEC teams are going to look at him and say, let's make someone else beat us. I think they're going to look at Vahiva Aloy and say, let's make someone else beat us. And I think what you're seeing with this Arkansas lineup is guys like Charles Davalon, guys like Logan Maxwell, guys like Kendall Diggs or whoever it is, stepping to the plate and being ready to take on that challenge and willing to make teams pay for pitching around these other big donkeys. And again, I think that's what kind of sets this lineup apart, is having two real star power threats in the middle of the lineup with Vahiva and with Brent Iredale. That just raises the overall ceiling of the group, and it just makes everyone else better around them. And so let's move on to our first pitching winner of the weekend. We got to go with Mr. Zach Root, who puts together a really nice start for Arkansas, arguably his best of the year. He's just been a stabilizing force for this pitching staff overall, and certainly this weekend rotation. I thought Gackle and Beidelshees were both pretty solid. Didn't necessarily blow us away, but I thought they were solid, got Arkansas deep into the game. But Zach Root has the longest outing of the weekend, goes 6 innings, gives up just 3 hits, all of which kind of came later in that outing. I think one of them may have even been an infield single, doesn't allow a run, walks just 1 and throws 10 strikeouts, picks up his second win of the year. What I really like about Root's outing this past weekend, one, is that he continues to just mix the 4-pitch mix really well at a high level, constantly keeping hitters off balance, throwing a ton of strikes, being left-handed. Like, that's just going to be a recipe that works no matter what league you're in, no matter what level of competition you're facing. But he only throws 80 pitches and threw 6 innings. So I think if this were an outing that were happening in SEC play or down the stretch or even just a few weeks from now, this might have been one where if it was a close game even, Arkansas might have let him go 7, maybe 8 innings. And I think that's going to be huge for this Arkansas team. One of my bold predictions for the year, some of which have aged poorly, some of which have been fine. Arkansas is not the final undefeated team left in the NCAA, in case you have not noticed. But one of my bold predictions was that Zach Root would finish with more innings on the season than Hagen Smith did last year, which, really isn't that bold of a take, considering that Hagen was not a guy that was consistently going 7, 8 innings necessarily. Arkansas was pretty conservative with how they used him. Root currently leads the team with 21 1/3 innings pitched through 4 starts. And so that's already an average of more than 5 innings per game. That's more innings pitched than Hagen Smith had at this point. And like I said, I think in SEC play, you might see Arkansas start to stretch him out a little bit, really push the limits of how much they can use him. This weekend was weird because Arkansas wasn't able to use pretty much half their bullpen. You only had 2 relief pitchers throw in games 1 and 2 of this series, and then Arkansas was able to kind of piece it together in game 3. But you get into SEC play, the stakes start rising, the tension starts rising. You're in close games all the time. Having a starter that can just eat up 6, 7 innings on a whim like it's nothing is just such a game changer. It's something that all teams could really benefit from. Next pitcher's performance that I want to highlight, our final winner of the weekend, that would be one Carson Wiggins, who this is his second time winning this honor. He won it opening weekend when he made a notable debut, throwing 100 a ton of times. And again, it's really not as much about the outing itself, although the outing was pretty good. He goes 1 inning, doesn't give up a hit, doesn't give up a run, doesn't walk anyone, has 1 strikeout, which weirdly enough, that was the one batter that reached against him because Ryder Hofer couldn't locate that ball in the dirt. And he does pick up his 3rd save of the year. But really, the reason why he's a winner of the weekend is because Arkansas went to him in the 9th inning. They went to Christian Fouch in the 8th inning, Carson Wiggins in the 9th. That certainly is not something we should be overlooking. I think that's a pretty big deal, pretty big message being sent. And Carson Wiggins, of course, has been in the 9th inning before. This is his 3rd save of the year. We knew he was a closing option for Arkansas, but the fact that they switched it up, the previous weekends, Christian Fouch had been getting the first high leverage 9th inning work, and then they would go to Carson Wiggins later in the weekend once Christian Fouch wasn't really available. This was the first weekend coming off of Christian Fouch blowing a save last weekend where they went to Carson Wiggins first. There was only 1 save situation this weekend, and it went to Carson Wiggins, in which for him to be a freshman who has 4 innings under his belt and already be kind of getting those nods, I feel like is a big deal. And of course, doesn't hurt whenever you go out there and you look good doing it. You work around some traffic that wasn't even your fault. You get a double play ball to end it. Gets a big punch out with the breaking ball, which is something we're seeing more and more from him. So Carson Wiggins has thrown 4 innings now for Arkansas, only allowed the 1 run, which came in that rough Michigan outing. Outside of that, he's been pretty much money in these late game save situations. Really good stuff to see, really encouraging. I also, kind of going back to what I've been ranting about coming into the season, I love the way that they're using him and the way that they're basically limiting it to shortened outings. The most amount of pitches he's thrown was in his first outing. He threw 20 pitches, has not thrown more than 13 since then. So they're keeping it pretty safe with him. They're being pretty meticulous with how they use him. I think that's going to set him up for success. I think it's cool for him to be in this closer role and get some of this experience. And I think this is a big deal for this Arkansas team moving forward. So really good stuff from Carson Wiggins once again. A few other performances that I felt like noting. Aiden Jimenez only threw to 3 batters. He retired all 3 of them. Didn't get any strikeouts. Got a pop up, a ground ball out, and then I believe it was a fly ball out to Justin Thomas, who made a really nice play. So just 1 inning of work, gets the 3 outs. No real drama there. But again, he comes into a high leverage situation. They throw him in the 7th inning of a 5-3 game, and then they go Fouch, and then they go Wiggins. I think that's a big deal for Aiden Jimenez to not only be getting that nod, but to pitch well in that nod. And so I think he's kind of solidifying his circle of trust role there. So really good for him. I wanted to note his performance. Didn't necessarily crack the top 5 winners of the weekend, but I thought it was a productive, notable outing for him to go out there to get the nod in that spot and come through for Arkansas. Another performance I wanted to note on the hitting side, Kendall Diggs. I wouldn't say he was necessarily a winner of the weekend, especially since he only got 1 start in this series, but gets it in his 1 start. He goes 1 for 4 with a 2-run home run, which wound out being a walk-off. But he came in for a pinch hit or defensive replacement situation on Friday, hits a 2-run triple. He got 7 plate appearances this weekend, and in those 7 plate appearances, he had 2 hits, a home run and a triple, drove in 4 runs, scored a couple more, also had a couple walks mixed in there. And so Kendall Diggs, again, you're starting to kind of see him get back to the guy he was his sophomore year. I think he's a solid threat at the plate. Logan Maxwell also is dealing still with, again, that little hamstring injury. Seems to be flaring up and continuing to bother him. We'll kind of keep our eyes peeled and see what the situation is there. But Kendall Diggs, I don't think is going away anytime soon. I know a lot of fans really want to phase him out of the lineup for whatever reason that is. I don't know. Maybe it's just a personal vendetta. I don't know. But he's swinging the bat pretty well. Batting average sitting at 258 right now, which isn't going to blow anyone away. But he's working walks, starting to see some of that power. He had 2 home runs this week. I think Kendall Diggs is, again, kind of back to being the guy that we knew and love as a sophomore. So I'm excited to see his development, see if he can keep it going. But wanted to note his performance as well. And so those are your winners of the weekend. It was a productive weekend for the Arkansas Razorbacks. A lot of winners at the office. Probably could have made a case for a couple more guys, but those were the 5 that we landed on. A couple honorable mentions there as well. But like I said, really good, productive weekend for the Arkansas Razorbacks. The tests will get harder, but I feel like this team is equipped to pass those tests and make it look easy some weekends. And so we'll see how they fare. Back at the Yard on Tuesday night tomorrow. First home night game of the year at 6 p.m. tomorrow against UCA. Big in-state rivalry. We will, of course, have a recap for that action there following that game. So tune in for that. Be on the lookout for that. And make sure you're subscribed to this Inside Arkansas YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed to the Baumbastic Podcast wherever you get your pods. Give this video a like and a thumbs up on YouTube. And we will be back tomorrow night. Appreciate everybody for tapping in. It's been another brilliant edition of the Baumbastic Podcast and your weekend winners. Let's have a great Monday, everyone.